This documentary is supported by EBRD.
Today, we explore a new step in the entrepreneurial journey. The growth and expansion stages are critical but distinct phases. The growth stage comes after achieving product-market fit, where the focus shifts to scaling the business by acquiring more customers, increasing revenue, and optimizing operations. During this time, startups typically secure Series A or B funding, build out their teams, and refine their sales and marketing strategies to create a repeatable and scalable business model. Once a company has solidified its position in its initial market, it enters the expansion stage. Here, the goal is to take what works and replicate it on a larger scale. This could mean entering new geographic markets, diversifying the product line, or targeting new customer segments. A healthy startup often cycles between these two stages. Bulgaria's startup ecosystem has positioned the country as a leading hub for innovation and entrepreneurship in Southeast Europe. Despite the positive trajectory, founders face numerous challenges. What do these look like from the perspectives of founders, investors, and ecosystem builders?
Well, typically what we see in our ecosystem, and probably it's relevant to any other ecosystem, is that companies have two sets of challenges. The organizational challenge to transform the operation from something that was led by the vision and the energy of their founders, almost single-handedly, into an organization that delivers on the mission, on the vision of these founders. It sounds like a nuance, but it's actually a very substantial change. It comes down to developing a solid and sustainable organizational structure, an efficient organizational structure. Also effective and efficient processes that can sustain this growth and be the platform for adding more resources, more products to the stack. And then obviously there are other elements of this, like sound financial reporting and financial management in general, something that is relevant both for the efficient and effective management of the company itself, but also at this stage, companies are now dealing with external stakeholders, such as their investors, for example, which need to receive a good quality information about the activities of the companies, which leads us to the second set of challenges, and it's obviously and inevitably availability of scale-up capital.
Since I started my career in venture capital and private equity, we have always invested in expansion, Series A+. So what I have observed as the most challenging hurdles for companies at this stage is first, scaling too fast, too soon, when they have not done the proper analysis prior to investing too much in new markets, which also comes with market adaptation. So if you scale too fast, people think that any inefficiencies will be solved by the growth. But instead, growth actually exposes the inefficiencies. So if you have not prepared well for this expansion in terms of fundamentals for this business, corporate governance, corporate structure, the right team, all of these deficiencies compound much faster.
I think the main hurdle consistently throughout the year was how to manage the cash flow, especially if you're growing organically. But I believe also in certain cases, even in the inorganic growth, that is always a topic one should be very careful with. And in an inorganic manner, in terms of merging and acquiring other teams.
Another big challenge for the companies, not just in our own ecosystem here, but I would say regionally and probably Europe in general for that matter. The availability of scale-up capital is still relatively scarce. It doesn't help that as a region, not just as a country, but as a region, we're still not very popular or not very much known to large international investors.
It's very important, this self-awareness of, okay, for instance, I'm the founder, I'm the best at product, but I'm not the best for a CEO position. Also because it's not my strength. So this means we need another person for CEO, especially if we are entering 5 new markets. So if this level of self-awareness is there, then everyone on the table sits and thinks about the best way possible to achieve this so that it's in favor of the development of this company.
One has to be very careful to make sure that enough time is dedicated for normal personal conversations. We all know that, but in many cases, due to the fact that everyone is extremely busy and there are numerous activities that have to be completed on hourly basis, basically, we sometimes forget the importance of taking the time and talking to the people, make sure that the right culture is spread over in those moments, and this is something that no one should underestimate. People has to find the energy and the time to keep talking to each other.
Scaling and expanding a company requires a series of strategic optimizations to ensure sustainable growth and adaptability in new markets. What are some key areas where companies typically need to focus their optimization efforts?
Game theory resonates very well with the decision-making process that founders need to make. So the Nash equilibrium basically says that you should stop optimizing in isolation. You should start optimizing so that in the end of the day you are in equilibrium with the market dynamics around you. And this basically means that for each market you enter and for each product you sell, there are specific challenges and homework that you need to do in advance, because it's not like all markets want what you have to sell, and there are complexities and including local regulations, mentality and different cultures, different languages, different type of the whole sales process that you need to take into account before entering a new market.
I must say here from personal perspective, I've dealt for a long time with startups, early stage, seed stage, before my role in Nasekomo, and I will always appreciate this romanticism that the first stages of entrepreneurship present to the teams. When everyone is involved in all the processes, the idea is extremely important. It actually takes all of the room, and you feel like a creator, which is a fantastic feeling. But as you grow, and which happens in Series C, you have to become more specialized opposed to generalized, which requires you to install systems that allow people to become specialists in what they do. And also requires more control, another approach in the management of the company, more established processes, so to mind more the establishment of processes and following them.
Well, it starts with the fact that you need people who can handle work. So this is, to me, I mean, the team is the most important. So when you go with a growth mindset, you typically are not really thinking on the optimization side, but how with what we have, we could further scale and cover more. Specifically on the optimizations, so what we've done is, before the merge, before making a big step towards growing the company, we individually, the different parties merging, we took the steps to optimize, so that when the merge happens, we are already at an optimal level and it is easier to move on. I think that was an important and reasonable thing that we've done. But again, it's important to look how to expand and how you can do more with the people and leverage the enormous enthusiasm and optimism in the team when basically such things are happening.
When scaling operations, obviously you have to scale your sales capacity, you have to scale your distribution capacity. What many people overlook is that you have also to scale your supply capacity, which is your ability to produce the product that you do or to deliver the service that you do. And it turns out that in many instances, that becomes also the biggest issue. So when you're about to scale your company, look at the whole picture and think about also if you will be able to deliver what you currently deliver in case you need to do it to many new markets or like to hundreds of new customers.
Scaling is about efficiency. So when you grow your business, any mistake you make costs you a lot more than it used to when you were a small starting company. That's why efficiency is super important, because I remember at one of our international selection panels back in the days, one of the panelists there had a very strong message to the companies that we were actually presenting at this panel, which was doing really well, growing fast. And he said, look, make sure that you don't grow yourself to death. Basically meaning that if the pace of growth exceeds the capacity of the organization to sustain this growth, it's actually really can be lethal for the business. So making your operations ever more efficient, for me, is one of the keys to successful scaling.
Research conducted by the European Startup Network indicates that over 60% of Bulgarian startups planning international expansion invest in localized market research and cultural training. Given these insights, it is essential to consider in advance: how can Bulgarian startups effectively assess the factors that drive the need for expansion into new geographical markets?
I think it's the general common sense. You become an entrepreneur to solve a problem, to solve a large enough problem in the best possible way. So as far as markets are concerned, you're trying to find those markets where this problem exists and where you can provide a good solution to this problem. So I can't say that there is a clear choice for every company, for example, go to the US or go to Western Europe. It really depends on the type of business, on the type of problem you're solving and the type of solution you're providing to the market. So you have to do your homework and really establish where you're most relevant as a business and as a solution provider, which at the end of the day, you are.
I would say there are two approaches here. You either expand to a huge market where you see lots of customers paying good price for your product or service, or you expand to a more niche market where there is less competition, but still you have something unique to offer. With the case of motion software, we took the first approach. Our target markets were the US and the UK, which are still like the biggest consumers of software services and software teams, offshore software teams. And that was a great approach because there was a big demand for what we were doing. The most important thing, obviously, is to offer something that is in demand in the current market and to follow the trend of the market, because many people struggle to grow their business simply because they don't offer things that are currently in demand.
You need to see what we do usually in terms of market research is first, what is the level of the competition? How is this problem being solved by other players on the market, and how do the customers actually get to their product or service, because it might be a similar one solving the same problem. So this is what we need to understand, like what's the thinking of the customer and what are the key pains for this customer, so that we can actually address them. And very often these pains are different from market to market and from industry to industry as well. So we do this, we do some focus groups with customers just to cross-check what is their initial opinion of what we have to offer. We spend carefully. This also comes with capital efficiency, because it is very important for companies to budget well before just trying to spend. Because what we see very often is, I have this budget, I just got the fundraising, now is the time for the scale and the expansion. But we should never compromise scale for stability and for sustainability, meaning it's not just about selling something. You should sell it to the right people at the right price at the right time.
As companies transition from the growth and expansion phases, they often encounter the need for additional capital to fuel their next stage of development. At this point, Series B funding becomes crucial. It is characterized by substantial investments aimed at scaling operations and expanding market reach. The success of companies like Payhawk, which raised significant Series B funding to expand internationally, and the increasing involvement of Bulgarian venture capital firms in regional investments highlight the growing potential of Bulgaria's startup ecosystem. Given this momentum, one question stands out. What factors determine when a company is truly ready to secure Series B funding and take its growth to the next level?
Well, it's always, of course, very subjective. It's subjective on the type of business model, on the industry vertical, as well as obviously the macroeconomic situation in the region, in the world in general. As a rule of thumb, I would say that acceleration of the international presence, already existing international presence, is probably the right timing for adding even more fuel to the engine, to allow you to take up on more markets than you're already operating. Building your team that can handle those markets, obviously funding your go-to-market strategy and marketing efforts in all these new markets. All these requires substantial amount of capital, which comes as a rule at Series B.
There should be a product market fit. I mean, we need to see that this business model is already operational and that they have the scalability potential. And also what we need to see is that actually this product or service they are offering, it is profitable. It doesn't mean that the whole company at Series B needs to be profitable, but there should be a clear line so that you know, okay, I did the first service at this market. On a standalone basis, it is profitable, so now I want to replicate this progress in other markets or with new products. For this, I need investment, but it's very important for us to be able to differentiate between the two, because if a company comes and they're like, okay, I've been developing very well, but I'm 5 years into my lifetime and I'm still spending 300K per month. It's very important for the particular founder to understand if these 300K are for investment purposes or if these 300K are just to support the loss-making business model.
We are on the verge of kicking off Series B fundraising campaign, which will allow us now to start realizing our bold vision, and it is the technologies that we've developed. They are proprietary, developed by our team to be deployed at scale, which will allow us our bioconversion units that make possible to discover new scales of value in the agricultural biomass and low-valued streams, or things that people in the industry regard as not very valuable. They're more on the verge of dealing with that as a burden. We actually, based on these materials, now we can upcycle them into very valuable ingredients for the feed industry and for the fertilizer industry, and we do it in a very sustainable way. This makes possible local farmers to look at their waste streams, to look at their byproducts and actually have a new business power in their hands. And we foster the economy on a local level.
For a Series B investor, it's important to be very much hands-on, and this means high level of partnership level, which is similar very much to a sports team or even a family where everyone has the same goal and everyone needs to support the other so that the team wins in the end. And this also comes with all type of principal agent problems, for instance, where the different stakeholders may have different incentives and may try to optimize for different goals. So this is something that we try to mitigate from day one, so that in the end of the day, we are in the same boat, we have the same incentives, and the best case scenario is best case for all, not just for some of the stakeholders.
Scaling a company successfully requires a thoughtful approach to leadership, organizational capacity, and an understanding of multicultural dynamics. Founders must recognize that, as their business grows, they will need to evolve their structure. A survey by the Bulgarian Association of Innovative Businesses found that approximately 70% of startups that restructured their leadership teams during their growth phase reported significant improvements in operational efficiency and strategic clarity. In such an evolving ecosystem, leaders must also get comfortable with tough decisions and embrace resilience. Challenges like navigating through financial uncertainty situations are part of the growth journey. But a strong, focused leadership that adapts to challenges head-on is key to ensuring that the company not only survives, but succeeds in the competitive global market.
Second, we need to know whether the founders themselves actually evaluate the right way the operational and organizational capacity they will need to build so that it supports this bigger organization. And this also means key hires, means additions to the leadership team, means the whole mindset of the founder not being like, it's my baby and no matter what, I'm the right person to steer it going forward regardless of what's going on. I mean, the best companies actually, they have different leadership roles and they evolve over time, including new hires.
As a CEO of the company, I've been involved in the toughest problems and like the most weird things that happen in the business. So tough decisions, what you do every day. You simply should get used to that. We've been at the brink of bankruptcy multiple times per year. And I think that's something that happens to pretty much every new business that is growing and it's still establishing itself. And at some point you simply get used to that and stay focused and keep working regardless of what's happening and the circumstances. And I would say that's the main habit that the good leader should develop in order to make its company work.
Probably at this stage, you have to learn to understand a multicultural environment. Because at this stage, usually the business operates in multiple markets. And also at this stage, usually the business deals with stakeholders from multiple countries. And each of these, they have their own specifics. And you have to make sure that you have made the effort to understand all these different cultures, all these different perspectives, so that you can really be this global local player and really speak the language of your customers, of your investors, of your team that is now in multiple locations.
We grew our team, I think we expanded with 30% at least for 1 year, which is a dynamic process. So in terms of culture, this is probably one of the most important tasks for the management is to support and nourish the culture and also implement it through suitable instruments to make sure that it's spread, that it's shared by everyone in the company, no matter when they've joined it. And also it requires a lot of attention to the people. So we've established an HR capacity, internal and constant. Communication is a huge tool to help us do that. And also, as I said, instruments to make sure that all these messages, all our values are applied and understood and shared by everyone.
A crucial lesson that I learned is that all the important things should be done by the founders of the business and by the people who are behind the business. For example, you cannot hire, once you decide to scale, you cannot hire a marketing agency or sales agency and expect that they will make it for you. Of course, they can help, but you need to be with them every day because they don't know about the background of the business, they don't know your culture, they don't know your product as good as you. So this is my main lesson: be there every day and do the important stuff yourself.
As we were growing, at some point we started our administration, especially in the area of around finance and accounting, it started not to cover that well the needs of the company. And this actually struck most during the preparation for the M&A activity and during the merge, because we needed a lot of exactly those efforts, a lot of as part of due diligence, as part of making the deal basically. And this is one of my learnings when it comes to such lessons, that basically I would invest more in finance accounting than actually before.
My advice is to do it consciously with minimum extra overheads and expenses while capturing the maximum of the market there. A big mistake I would say that we did when expanding to multiple markets is that we started new subsidiaries in several countries. And when we exited Motion Software, it turned out that created lots of friction in the process, since each of these entities had to go through due diligence and like the whole approval process separately. And also the second mistake was that we not just had different entities, but we had different owners in these entities, like little shareholders from the different countries that were our partners, and that made the whole process even harder. So if you expand to different markets, I suggest making it as simple as possible and keep the company structure as plain and simple as possible.
So first, never compromise scale for stability. I mean, what comes and what works for 5,000 customers usually breaks at 50,000 unless you really have the good preparation in advance. So my first advice is prepare. Don't wait for the last minute. Prepare for the expansion, see what you need, and try to establish this strong basis for your business before growing it 5 times. This also gives confidence to the investors that you actually know what you're doing and you will not collapse right after the investment. Second is take well-justified decision and not based on gut feelings. Like, there is always the gut feeling for every good founder. They have the gut feeling. I also, as investor, have a gut feeling, but I never take a decision just based on emotion and gut feeling. You need the right research. You need the numbers to show that you're right. And you need to be aware of all the scenarios where you might not be right, just to know how to differentiate between the two.
I would say basically that people, with the ambition to build something beautiful, something bigger, and to progress, throughout this life we are, having our existence part of, I would say people should remain humble, should keep you know, what was really making them good humans, and keep being based on that, evolve their ambition and bravery to actually to achieve more. So my advice is be brave and actually drive for change, drive for evolution.
If you have a vision, if you know where you want to go, and if you are confident that the impact that you're going to realize with your company is needed, it's shared, just remind yourself in the difficult moments that you're there to realize your vision and that it's shared with your co-founders, with your team, and actually with your customers. And this is what is going to make you go through the difficulties and actually feel accomplished and energized to continue.
If you're healthy, thanks to the universe, then a little bit of a bravery and 18 hours working day, and yeah, that's it.
This documentary is supported by EBRD.